So someone listening right now and they're doing, I call it ish, right? Maybe they got a side hustle and they're doing it ish. They've got a full-time job and they're dreaming. They've got their foot in one world and another foot in another. What tips would you give them to transition from a full-time job to being a full-time entrepreneur?
Yeah, so what a great question. Thanks so much for the question, Susan. And I think the biggest thing I would say is become a practitioner first. You have got to put in those reps, like whatever it is that you're learning, whatever it is that you have this passion about that keeping you up past some hours that you probably want to be up, get good at it, right? And then start to actually put it out into the marketplace. I talk to a lot of like clients that I'm coaching, and one of the biggest mistakes I see is they want to build things 100% out first before they put it to the market. And what happens is if that fails, they just spun their wheels for a lot of time without actually seeing if the market wants it. And so my biggest advice is become a practitioner of whatever that is, whatever that skill set is that you want to monetize. Become good at it, become known for it, and start getting people to talk about it, that you are an expert in that area.
I love that, Jordan, because so many people, they're not testing the water, so to speak, first. Is there a market for what you're doing? Can you get, 5, 10 customers before you go and venture out? I have a friend that I know, and he was full time working for Starwood. So back in the day before the Marriott acquisition, and making this massive income. And he really loved detailing cars, and he started a little side hustle doing it. One day he came home and said to his wife, I want to do this full time. And her first thoughts were, you are insane. But he built up that client base to the point where he was covering off the same amount of money he would have been making after tax. And so they took that leap of faith, and now he's wildly successful. So I love that. You worked for 15 years. Let's jump into your story. So what was your career prior to becoming a full-time entrepreneur?
Oh man, I'd love to talk about it. And actually, I've been working since I was 14.
Mm-hmm.
So, the 15 years was actually with one company, which in 2021, that is not very common. And so it's so funny. The story actually started when my wife and I just had our first child. He was about 6 months old. He is now 16, which is just
Mm-hmm.
crazy to think about. And we were living in an apartment. And I went one day to go get a package from the office, and they every time they'd see me, I'd always talk to them. I'm very positive, and I would ask them questions, and they said, "Have you ever thought about doing leasing?" And I'm like, "I don't know what that is, but do you have benefits? Because we have this brand new child that we need benefits for." And at the time, believe it or not, I was doing landscaping for my dad. He's from the Philippines. He came to the United States in the 80s and started a landscaping business he's had for 40 years. And so I was literally digging holes, planting, mulching, all that hard labor every day. And I'm a high extrovert. And so I got to talk to nobody. The people I got to actually speak with didn't even speak English. And so I'm actually learning Spanish in this role that I don't actually get energy from because I need to communicate. And so when they offered and said, you should apply for this role, I applied for it and I got the position. And within 6 months, I got promoted. I was the top sales guy. I got promoted to be an assistant manager, which is basically like a bookkeeper, which I hated, Susan, but I knew where I wanted to get. I knew I wanted to be a property manager. So I busted my butt for 9 months. I went from leasing, getting hired, no experience, to property manager, managing multi-million dollar properties in 16 months. And so the company hadn't seen anything like that before. I was a manager for about 6 years. A opportunity came up in the training department. I applied for it. That was 8 years ago. I beat out people that had degrees. I think it was just my passion. They saw that I really wanted to do this. I've always had a passion for teaching and training and coaching. And so here I am in this role. I'm don't really know what I'm doing. I wanted to do it. I knew that I could do it, but now I'm like, wow, I've got to actually teach people. I've got to train people. And when I tell you, Susan, when I got that role in 2012 to when I left in 2021, just a couple months ago, it changed a lot, right? Because technology changed, social media became prevalent, and so I learned and taught myself so many skill sets. I know how to do whiteboard animation. I know graphic design. I know video editing. I taught a 6 month leadership program. And so I got so much practice in so many different areas over the past 15 years that I probably could have picked any one of them and made that a side hustle and turned it into the business. But the only reason I could is because I put myself out there and I practice each of those things. And so that's why I answered that question in the beginning, because you've got to be good at what you do. You've got to
Mm.
have you've got to show up in a way that people actually believe in you. But most importantly, Susan, I had to believe in myself. And that was probably one of the biggest epiphanies that I had in 2019. And we can talk about that here in a bit.
Yeah, for sure. And I love what you said. You were developing your skills along the way. A lot of people spend time in their job just loathing it and resenting it, as opposed to shifting that mindset and saying, hey, in essence, I am getting paid and receiving benefits to be able to learn skills. And a lot of companies out there, they'll pay for training and development, they'll pay for conferences. And it allows someone to get the skills that will catapult their entrepreneurial career. There's a friend of mine, Harvey McKay, he's my mentor, and he's written, many people know he's written seven, maybe it's eight New York Times bestsellers now. One of the things Harvey says is people often stay in a job they resent at least 2 years too long. And bosses often don't fire people that should be fired and keep them at least 2 years too long, which is an interesting sort of, equation when you think that person who's there and resenting the last 2 years, and the boss is like, that person needs to go.